Hey folks, the City of Brampton is bullying us regarding our reports on Mayor Patrick Brown. Now, as you surely know by now, Rebel News never bends the knee. So, subscribing to the strategy that the best defense is an offense, we recently had one of our lawyers send a letter to Mayor Brown, and yeah, the word defamation is prominent in that letter. Allow me to read excerpts from our letter to Brown. As you will recall, on August 5th, 2020, you encountered Mr. Menzies at a Brampton hockey arena. At that time, Mr. Menzies immediately identified himself as David Menzies from Rebel News. He was carrying a microphone attached to a hockey stick, which was clearly labeled as the property of Rebel News. Now, don't take my word or our lawyer's word for that, folks. Here's the video evidence.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
Mr. Brown, right? David Menzies with Rebel News. The letter continues. Mr. Menzies was wearing a hat and jacket bearing the Toronto Maple Leafs logo. As you will recall, Mr. Menzies asked you a number of questions about the circumstances under which you were present at the arena. In essence, you refused to answer any of his questions and walked away and into a motor vehicle in the parking lot, in which you then drove away. Mr. Menzies was then astonished to discover that on August 8, 2020, you published a tweet on your Twitter account saying the following: I was made aware of some fake news from the discredited Rebel media. They pretended to be from Maple Leafs TV, wanting to interview the mayor. I walked away when I realized it was Rebel media. I don't do media interviews with an entity that has a track record on inciting hate. By the way, folks, it should be noted that there's no such thing as Maple Leafs TV. There was a channel called Leafs TV, which is now called Leafs Nation Network. But the point is, Maple Leafs TV is a figment of Brown's imagination. So I never used that fake name in the first place because it only exists in Brown's vivid imagination. Oh, and if I were to pretend I was with another media organization, isn't my cover kind of blown by that, Rebel News mic flash? Anyway, let's continue with our letter. Your reference to Rebel Media as an entity that has a track record on inciting hate is a matter to be dealt with separately. Of immediate concern is the statement made in that tweet that Mr. Menzies, an experienced and reputable journalist, had pretended to be a representative of an entirely different broadcaster, presumably as a ruse designed to induce you to answer his questions. Accordingly, the above statement, which you published on Twitter, is a complete fabrication. Inasmuch as it disparages Mr. Menzies' integrity as a journalist, this statement is also highly defamatory. Unfortunately, you compounded the problem in an interview which you conducted on a local Brampton radio show several days later, in which you stated the following: David Menzies, the same one that Doug Ford had to have removed, was the same guy that, he had pulled this stunt at our recreational center. And by the way, Jagdish, he impersonated Maple Leafs TV coming into our recreation center, but he's not allowed in. It was a private rental. He impersonated someone, which is wrong, and you're not allowed to break into a city facility that is closed for a private rental. Break in? The door was wide open, folks. It's a taxpayer-funded public recreational center, after all. And again, days later, Brown is still calling Leafs Nation Network, aka Leafs TV, Maple Leafs TV. He just still can't get it right. The letter continues. As indicated above, in the same interview, you referred to an alleged episode in which Mr. Menzies was removed by the police from a function put on by Premier Ford, and furthermore, that Premier Ford had banned Mr. Menzies from any future events. You repeated this statement in a subsequent interview as well. These allegations are also completely false. Premier Ford has never had Mr. Menzies removed from any of his events or banned him from attending any future events. These statements are also damaging to Mr. Menzies both personally and as a responsible journalist for Rebel Media, a conservative media outlet. As you know, Premier Ford is an important and respected political figure in this province and in this country, particularly by those citizens with a conservative orientation. Your false allegations that such an important figure in the conservative community would have Mr. Menzies excluded from his events will not be tolerated. Both of the events referred to above give rise to an action against you for damages for defamation. In both cases, your defamatory statements were circulated both in social media and on radio to a huge audience both locally and elsewhere. So you see, folks, Brown was implying in that interview that my ideology is so toxic that even our right of center Premier Ford, found it so over the top that he had to boot me out from an event and call the cops. Except that, again, it never happened. Our letter continues. We require that you immediately post on your Twitter account a complete retraction of both statements together with a full apology and cause it to remain there for not less than 2 weeks. To ensure that there are no misunderstandings, we ask that you provide us with a draft of the proposed tweet before posting it for our client's approval. Your failure to do so will compound the damages being sustained by Mr. Menzies and will be brought to the attention of the court in the legal proceedings to be commenced against you. So there you have it, folks. We're standing our ground and we are asking Mayor Brown to, well, do the right thing, correct the record, admit to those lies. And I hope he does in the days ahead. But if he doesn't, well, let's put it this way, Mr. Brown, you're going to have to tell it to a judge under oath. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, you know we love to bring you the other side of the story. And also, we don't bend the knee to anyone, especially when we are the aggrieved party. If you can, please go to sneakypatrick.com. That's sneakypatrick.com. That legal letter that I just read excerpts from, well, that kind of letter does not come cheap. And if this goes to further litigation, we'll have to fund those legal bills too. So please, if you're able to, make a donation so that we can indeed continue to bring you the other side of the story.